Hi, I'm George from Joypad, and welcome to another retro repair video. At Joypad, we provide retro video game entertainment for festivals, private parties, and our own events. As most of the equipment that we use is over 15 years old, occasionally some things need to be serviced or repaired. In this video, I'm going to show you how to service and repair a controller for the N64. One of my jobs at Joypad is to keep our dozens and dozens of controllers all clean and in good working order. Something I noticed with the N64 controller is that white powder that looks a bit like dust forms at the base of the joystick. Now, it's not dust. What it actually is the joystick rubbing against the base inside the controller and wearing down the joystick and its base. This is what causes a lot of N64 controllers to have loose and wobbly joysticks. And what eventually happens is that the joystick isn't very responsive and it doesn't work very well. There are two things we can do about this. Firstly, I'm going to show you how to repair the damage, and then I'm going to show you what you need to do to stop this from happening again and in the future. So, for this retro repair, we're going to need the following equipment. We're going to need a small phillips screwdriver, Isopropanol, cotton buds, antibacterial wet wipes, some kitchen roll, and multi-purpose lithium-based grease, which you can get from most DIY stores. You'll need a drill, a 2mm drill bit, and you'll also need some extra strong for hard plastics super glue. So the first thing we're going to need to do is take the controller apart, and that means taking apart the 7, 8, 9 screws in the back. So just take your Phillips screwdriver and start undoing the screws. Once you've taken the large screws out the back, there's also 2 screws down inside the rumble pack or memory card port on the controller. These are a different size screw to the main screws, so make sure you keep note of that and keep them separate. Once you've taken the screws out, the back should lift off. There's one little button in the back which comes out, and then that's done. Now with the back, take out the buttons. There's more screws to come out. These 3 goldish looking screws, they hold the joystick unit in place. You want to undo those. Now don't undo the little black screw in the back, because that holds together the joystick assembly, and we'll get to that later. Now once those screws are out, you unclip this button and that's loose. Then the whole board will just lift out in one piece. Take your controller bits out and put them all to one side. I find it's helpful if you're unsure or you want to keep a record of what buttons went where. All of the little coloured buttons only go back into their designated slots. They won't fit in any other places, but you can lay out what you take out in the layout of the controller when you put it down. Now, next we're going to separate the joystick from the main controller board. That means taking this wire loom out. Probably use your screwdriver just to get it started a little bit, and it should come out. There we go, that's done. Now keep your joystick to one side, we're going to come back to that later. And this too. So, first job, take your antibacterial wipes clean up the controller itself. Dry off the residue or leftover liquid from the antibacterial wipe. And leave that to one side. Next thing we're going to do is take our isopropanol and we'll clean the dust and dirt out of the plastic contactors in here. Now we're going to move on to the slightly more complicated part, which is the joystick itself. Now to take the joystick apart, it's held together by one screw in the back, but be careful when you're taking it apart because there's a spring inside which, if you take it apart too quickly, it will explode everywhere and you'll be picking up the bits off the floor. So take your screw off, holding it together. It should start to spring a little bit. Now there's two clips here and here. If you pull it up so that this bit comes past it, you'll be able to sort of feel when it goes a bit loose, and then you have to kind of prise the clips off the back, there and there. Now, what you'll see inside, if yours is anything like mine, is all of this white powder. Now the white powder is where the bottom of the joystick in this sprung assembly has been rubbing, if I take this part out, against the plastic block at the bottom, and it's been wearing the plastic block out and it's been wearing the joystick out. So we're going to take this apart. It all just pops out into pieces. Now, to get this apart, the joystick turns round and fits through the black slot there, and the spring pops up. And you take the spring out and everything else just comes out. And what you should be left with is two black arms, the grey joystick, the top and bottom of the housing, a spring, a clear white plastic washer, the plastic base, and the electronic counter. First things first, I'm going to take that dust out of the plastic base. So if the joystick on your controller is very loose and you found a lot of white residue in there, what it means is that the joystick has rubbed away too much of the base and is now lower, so when it twists on its axis it won't push as far as it should, which means if you're in a game, for instance, you're trying to run forwards, you won't run forwards as fast as you should. So the way that we're going to try and repair this is to rebuild the plastic base. If you have a joystick that is functional and doesn't need a repair, skip forward to the part of the video where I show you how to prevent this from happening. This is where your drill and the super glue comes into the equation. Take your drill and your 2mm drill bit. On the bottom, there is a hole, dead center, which is 2mm wide. What we're going to do is drill through into the plastic base. Then once the hole's there, you'll have to put this on an edge of a table because it's not flush, but we're going to put a little bit of paper underneath, like that, on the edge of a level surface, and then we're going to put super glue into the bottom. The reason that we drill the hole is because if you imagine it, the glue will set in a kind of turned out umbrella shape with a stem, which means that there's less chance of it working free and breaking off and you ending up with the same problem again. So the first thing we're going to do is drill our hole. That's it. So you should be able to see we have a hole. So now take your plastic base and put it onto the corner of a level surface with a bit of paper or card underneath. Next, put some super glue into the base, and don't put too much in and try and be very neat with it. We're only talking about building up millimeters of plastic. Pinch the paper or card to the plastic base for a couple of minutes. This is till the super glue becomes tacky and will stop it leaking out the bottom of the hole. You want to resist the urge to play about with the glue whilst it's setting. Check the instructions on your super glue for how long it takes to fully set. Once it's hardened, you can then continue reassembling the controller. And I've got one here that I prepared earlier. Now, to reassemble the joystick assembly, once everything's been cleaned, the next thing you need to do to stop this from happening is to take your grease, and I'm going to squeeze out just a touch and put a dollop in the base. Just a little bit. What this will do is stop the plastic joystick from rubbing against the base and wearing both bits out as much. So we're lubricating the base there. First step to reassembling is to put the plastic base back in the bottom of the joystick. This will be followed by the electronic counter. Next, we have our two arms. There's a wide arm and a not so wide arm. You take the wider of the two, and this one fits into the base in the middle like that. Now, next we take your joystick. When you're putting this in, you have to twist it round side to side. As on the sort of ball joint, it has two slots which let it pass through into it. Once it's in, turn it round 90 degrees again. You then take your spring and the plastic washer, which has a little ridge in it which goes facing down on top of the spring. So it'll be obvious how that goes in because it stops it from falling off the top. You then take your smaller of your two arms. Push this in over the joystick, and then you have to twist the joystick round so that it holds together like that. The spring taut and all the plastic parts balancing together. The part with the teeth for the measuring wheel, that needs to be at the larger end. The pointy end is where the smaller rounder bit goes. Now, to put this together, you need to make sure that everything looks like that. Once you're certain everything goes like that, you push it together. Now the bottom of the joystick, this little bit here, goes into where that gap in the black plastic bracket is there. And then the plastic clips on the end will clip over. At that point, you're pretty safe. Even if you let go, it'll be held together. But push it all back down. Then you take the small black screw, screw that back together, and there we have all back together, repaired nicely. If you put a little bit too much grease in, you might find that once you've assembled it and used the controller, you might get a little bit of grease that escapes back out into the surrounding part of the joystick, but don't worry about that. Just wipe it off. The joystick will make sure the lubricant works its way around inside. And that means you will no longer get any white residue, which is nice. Now what we need to do is reassemble the controller. So, taking your base, first thing you want to do is pop the Z button back in. which is a little bracket pointing up, which clips in. Then we're going to take the front. Now you want to put all your buttons back in. As I said before, the buttons only go in the one place, so you don't need to worry about putting stuff in the wrong positions because they only fit in one slot. Next, take the circuit board and pop that in. Everything has little holes where it slots onto plastic holders, so there's no way you can put it back in wrong, so don't worry about that too much. There's also these plastic rubber contactors which are from the shoulder buttons. They go back onto these shoulder parts, and then they slot into little slots which hold them in place. So next we're going to put the cable back in, which slots in there. The cable will probably have some kinks in it which will indicate to you where that sits naturally. Next we have the joystick. That slots there. Now you take the 3 gold screws that held it in and screw these back into place. Reconnect the terminal block here, the little blue one, or I think sometimes they might be grey. Feel that make a definite click, and then this for the Z button clips in there. Again, that'll be pretty obvious where that goes in. Lastly, our shoulder buttons. You'll tell which one is which because they only have a downward prong on one side. They've also got left and right written on them, but if you're a bit dyslexic like me, that's not always obvious. And then all that remains is to clip the back on and put the screws back in. So there you have it, a fully serviced and repaired N64 controller that should now work long enough to hand it down as a priceless family heirloom. For more retro repairs, replay videos, and news on upcoming events, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking the subscribe button. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or why not go to our website www.joypadbar.co.uk, where you can see more info on our private hire setup, or subscribe to our mailing list to keep up to date with all our events. Until next time though, it's goodbye from me.